Hi, I'm Rebecca Brand, and today's recipe is sourdough bread, homemade, with a sourdough starter I made by scratch. This is a great family recipe. This video is sponsored by Snorple, and I love a Snorple. It's an anti-snoring mouthpiece. This recipe is a family recipe, so I reached out to them because making bread at home is great to do with the family. And if you have people in your house sleeping, you might have a snorer. No judgment. Click the link below in the description box and get your Snorple. Thank you, Snorple, for sponsoring this video. Let's get to our recipe. I did a sourdough challenge on my Facebook page, and I had maybe 30 people making sourdough. I'm going to roll through some of the images here because they followed this method, and these are the breads that they made just from this simple recipe. Every day on Facebook, I would post what that day's activities were because a sourdough needs a starter, and you can make that in your own kitchen with just flour and water. You don't have to get one from a friend or one that's been in the family for 100 years. You can make your own. This is what my starter looks like. It has a few bubbles on top. It's been making itself for 5 days because that's the magic day to make the bread, is 5 days. On the 5th day, this will turn into a loaf of bread. The reason sourdough is so interesting, especially during coronavirus, is that it has its own yeast and bacteria that it gets from the atmosphere in your house, in your kitchen. So this sourdough starter will be specific to you and everything about you. You've heard of the famous San Francisco sourdough bread. Well, that's particular to San Francisco and its environment and its natural wild yeast and bacteria. Well, your starter is going to be the flavor of your life. This is why this is such a very special recipe for you to make. All the Facebook loaves of the sourdough bread have their own different complexion and their own different taste, depending on which kitchen they came out of and which city. I'm going to explain in this video the simple way to get to the finish line. The reason I wanted to make this recipe is yeast has been very hard to get during the coronavirus. We couldn't get it anywhere. So without a yeast to put into bread, how can you make your bread? It's been hard to get bread. And who's going to the store very often? No one. It's been hard to buy bread during the coronavirus. We're all at home. A loaf of the sourdough bread is less than 40 cents a loaf. And if you buy flour in the 25-pound bags, because really, you're going to want at least 25 loaves of your sourdough bread at the end of this coronavirus, I would expect, then the price comes down to less than 40 cents a loaf. It's just simple math. The first step is starting your starter. So this video is going to go step by step through each of those days and how it went down in my kitchen. Put 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons flour, any kind of plain old flour, into a glass bowl. To that, add 1/2 cup of water, and all you have to do is just stir it up. It's going to get thick and sticky, and that's what you need. So just stir it up. It only will take you 20 seconds. Just like that. That's it. Cover in plastic, make the seal, and put it somewhere consistent in temperature in your kitchen. I'm going to stick it on top of my refrigerator. And every day I'm going to take that down and I'm going to do the same thing for days 2, 3, and 4. And day 5, we're going to make our bread. And we don't even need yeast. That's our sourdough starter. It is day 2, and it's time to do step 2 of our sourdough bread making. We have started our starter yesterday. It's been sitting overnight. Let's take a look. Off goes the plastic. Oh, what do we have here? It's getting darker in color, and I'm touching it, and it's even more liquidy than it was when I made it yesterday. You can see the different colors. Inside, it's lighter than it is on the outside. So let's repeat what we did day 1. We added 3/4 cup flour plus 2 tablespoons flour. Well, I'm gonna eyeball it. It's almost a cup of flour. In that goes. That would measure out to be 4 ounces if we had a scale, which I don't. And to that, we're gonna add 1/2 cup of water. and stir it up. We're going to incorporate it into day 1 of our mix as well. Your sourdough starter, which is only water and flour, is going to grab all the yeast from the wild yeast in the atmosphere and the bacteria floating around in your kitchen. And you're going to have your own unique starter for sourdough bread forevermore. It's going to be based on the environment you give it. That's why they're all unique. Every city is going to have its own. This is my Santa Barbara sourdough starter for my Santa Barbara sourdough bread. So this is what mine looks like. I'm going to cover it up and it's going to go back to the same place at different time. And then tomorrow we're going to do the same thing. So follow along. If you haven't done your starter yet, you can start today. You actually can feed it every 12 hours if you want to. Day 3. This is a sourdough bread starter, and it has been fermenting now for 2 days. This is the 3rd day. We can see we got some action, Jackson. There's all these little holes. And if I go like this, it's probably going to disturb, and you'll see it rest down there. That looks awesome. Day 3 is like Groundhog Day. Just like day 1 and day 2, day 3, we're again going to add 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of flour and 1/2 cup of water. And we're going to mix it around. It's going to incorporate into our other starter that was formed a couple days ago. If you are slow to join the challenge, that's okay, because you can feed your starter every 12 hours if you want to. So put back on your plastic, and it doesn't have to be tight. Remember, it's still acquiring bacteria and yeast from the atmosphere. And back to its resting place. It's gonna stay put until tomorrow. It is day 4 of our sourdough challenge. It's time to feed the baby. Wow, look at all that. We got all these bubbles going on. This is 3 days worth. And you know, I think I could probably make bread today, but no, I'm gonna follow the recipe 1 more day's worth. I hope that bowl can hold it all. That bowl's getting pretty full. What used to be a sticky dough ball is now kind of a gooey mess. I'm gonna stick my finger in it, considering I'm living alone in my own little germ environment. It enjoys bacteria and yeast from the air. I wanna show you what it looks like. That's what it looks like. In goes 3/4 cups plus 2 tablespoons flour and 1/2 cup of water. It's almost like a very heavy soup. So what we're doing is we're feeding it. Some recipes say you can take out half of that messy mess and then you put in your next 3/4 cup and 2 tablespoons of flour, 4 ounces of flour. A lot of recipes call for that. I wanted a recipe that would just be super, super simple. So this is why I chose this one. I really believe in the less stress in cooking, the better, especially if it's something new that you've never done before. Let's just keep it simple. Since this is my last day, I've done an extra good job of mixing it up. Okay, that's it. Back on, goes the plastic wrap. There we go. And back to its room it goes. Till tomorrow, which will be the 5th day and time to bake. And after all of that, here I am on day 5. We see that we have some foam at the top, and this is the consistency. It's kind of like a very thick gravy we have. The top of it is a little grayer than the bottom. We can see that it has some bubbles inside of it too, kind of in there like a lumpy pancake batter might look. It had been covered loosely with the plastic that I took off to show you now. For the recipe, we need 1 cup of water, I'm using filtered, plus 1 tablespoon. Bing! But we want this warm. So I'm gonna put mine in the microwave for 1 minute. But you don't want it to boil. So you gotta watch this part. And now we're gonna do the finger test. Good enough for government work. We don't want it too hot. If you can leave your fingers in there, you know, it's just too hot. I did this on purpose because I want to show you the fix. Because if you've been watching my channel, there's a lot of things that go wrong in the kitchen. So I'm going to show you a lot of things on my stuff, how to fix it when it does. This is too hot for me to touch. So what I'm going to do is pour out 1/3 cup of the very hot water, trash it, and then put 1/3 cup of cool water in. And now we do the finger test again. 2 fingers in, And that's just great. My fingers aren't getting burned. You can sit there in that little bath and have a good time. What we don't want is we don't want to kill our yeast by having it too hot. So it needs to be nice and a little warm bath for your fingers. If you like it, your fingers like it, the yeast is going to like it. You don't need a thermometer to make this bread. That's the point. And another thing, it's going to get cool on the counter as you get it all prepped up to make your next step. You want it warm to revive the yeast and make it in a nice, happy, hot tubbish-like environment. Well, not really that hot. So it grows and it fosters and they have a party all together with all that bacteria and yeast doing whatever they're doing. Now comes that mixing. You want 3/4 a cup of your starter. And you know, that looks like 3/4 a cup to me. What do you think? Into your bowl and scrape the extra out best you can. And now we add our water and mix it around. And again, that starter was at room temp, so it's going to bring the temperature down of your water even more. That's why you want it warm. And look it gets really thin. This is a consistency of what you want. And now this is going to do its thing, so you need to let that rest about 30 minutes. So mix it really good, and then we're going to add a flour. We want to add 4 cups of flour. I keep my measuring spoon in there. We want to add 4 cups of flour. So level it off and add the first one. And we're going to mix it cup by cup because it makes for a more evenly distributed flour content within your bread. It'll have some lumps in it, but that's okay. That's good enough for the first cup. Cup 2, and we add that. Give it a swirl. Cup 3, dump, and by cup 3 it gets a little tough to mix, but it's still really sticky in there, so I still use my spoon. Inside that dough it's really wet, so here comes cup 4, level, and the dump. I give it a couple of stirs with my spoon, and then it's time for my hands to get in there. And I just go like this to mix it up, and I have it touching those wet spots of the dough and grabbing that flour, punching it down, and I can feel the dough is warm, which I'm so happy about because that's going to help it with its rise action. It feels so good. If you have kids in a household, you really should share with them this recipe and have them help you make it. And in no time, they're going to be making it for you daily in your household because it is so fun to make and it's so gratifying because it doesn't take hardly any ingredients. And you've made that starter yourself. I keep bringing the dough up and I'm stretching it and I'm getting to the wet parts and it's going back down to touch the flour for those wet parts. They're sticking to my hand. And so that's good. It's now going to go on the breadboard and I'm going to knead it like this with my hand, mix it up, and fold it in on itself. If your dough is stickier, you could add your extra flour to it. And in fact, you could even add it tablespoon by tablespoon until you get the right consistency. But this is feeling really good. I love doing this part of the recipe. It is so fun. I keep turning it in on itself and pounding it down. You want to get it as mixed up as you possibly can. And then make a little ball. Dust your board with some of that flour. Spread it out and put it on again. It should be firm like this. There, I'm happy with that. It's all round. We're going to want our dough to rise for 30 minutes, so I'm putting it back in the bowl. This is called the autolyze step. All these terms. You're basically going to let it do its first rise. I intentionally did not put the salt in this step because salt will kill that yeast. So leave your salt out of your first step. Time for a nap. And cover with plastic wrap loosely. And with warm water, we're going to dampen a dish towel and wring it out. And on top it goes. I'm a bit complicated today. Thank you. And so that's going to sit here for 30 minutes minimum. You can wait an hour, whatever your schedule is. You might have that coronavirus phone call to make to your best friend. It's been half an hour. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, it's softer, it's risen a little bit. So I'm going to take it out and I'm going to knead it a little bit. So I dump some of this, don't want to waste anything, onto the cutting board and put the bread there. It's softer. You can feel it. It's like really stretchy. So I'm going to pull it apart and I'm going to sprinkle on 1.5 teaspoons of salt. If I had put the salt on earlier, it wouldn't have risen as much. It likes the salt later in life. There's one, folding it in on itself and the other way and kneading it some. And I'm pressing it down. And here comes the other 1/2 teaspoon of salt onto that layer. I'm using a fine salt that's iodized that you get in those cartons at the grocery store. That's good enough because I want the really small granules. I don't want the kosher salt on this. So press that salt in and then roll it up again. It feels great. It is so soft. So I stretch it, pull it apart. I kind of want the air bubbles in there. And I don't over knead my sourdough. I want air pockets in it. I'm fine. So I'm going to make a little round ball once again, and back in the bowl it goes. And after it's in its ball form, I'm going to put the towel opened up inside the bowl. Close her up. And for extra protection, I'm going to put my little plastic wrap like that so it doesn't dry out too fast. And she's going to take a long 4-hour nap, or about 3 or 4 hours, in a warm place. And today, it's a beautiful day. The sun is out. So tuck in the plastic. I don't want it to blow off. Because this loaf of bread needs to rise at least 1.5 to 2 times. Can't be disturbed. You can come and peek and check, but it's really got to be twice as big as that. And by having this bowl lined with this moist towel, it's also going to hold the shape of the dough so it doesn't get too flat. I want a round loaf when I bake it. At this time of the recipe, it's time to boil our snorkel. It's another recipe within a recipe. Snorkel is for snoring people. It's an anti-snoring mouthpiece. It effectively stops snoring. I mean, time is of the essence. If you know someone that snores, you should get them this as a present. Or pack one in the next trip you take with that person. It could be yourself. For a custom fit, you've got to start a timer for 1 minute and put it in 3 inches of boiling water. It's going to help someone sleep better, and this is how you make the custom fit. As soon as you put it in, turn off the heat and let that timer go. You're going to have a countdown. And when it's done, you're going to take it out. Use some tongs, shake it off, put some cold water on it, and put it all the way in your mouth. Right down. And then take it out and rinse it in cold water. And you can see my bite marks in it, the top and the bottom. And that's what gives it a custom fit. And you can check it. It's great. If it didn't work, somehow you didn't bite down hard enough, you just get to do it again. Same procedure. That's great. So we'll make sure you have one that fits you. You wear it at night, and then when you snore, you can see that you can breathe through it. There's me breathing. Look at that. I can breathe great. It feels very comfortable in my mouth while I do that. And it's going to take the snore out of the sound of me breathing. Just my pretty little purring breath. That's all someone's going to hear. I won't wake myself up with a That's been known to happen. Click the link below in the description box and get your snorkel. And if you use promo code Rebecca, you get free shipping on your snorkel. Check it out in the description box. Now back to the recipe. So I want to save my starter to use another time. I'm not going to make bread for a while, so I'm going to store it in the fridge. But I want to feed it first. So there's my 3/4 cups plus 2 tablespoons of flour. In it goes with 1/2 cup of water. You know this action. You've seen 4 days of it. But you just want to feed it before you store it. Like that. I'm going to cover tightly with plastic wrap or the plastic lid that came on this. I just can't find right now. And into my fridge for next time. For when I feel like sourdough again. And I'm going to even lick the spoon. It definitely tastes sour. It tastes like that aftertaste you have when you have great sourdough bread. It is not bad. It'll taste better as bread, I'm sure. But that's turned sour. Perfect. I think it's going to be a success. It's been 1.5 hours and I wanted to check on my bread, and I'm seeing it's very stretchy, so I'm going to show you a trick. I'm going to take it out now. It's stuck to this, which can happen. I should have dusted it a little more, but you can see how stretchy it is. This is the part where you get to put in some more air to your sourdough. So I'm laying some flour on my breadboard, and I'm taking this very wet piece of dough and stretching it out, and I'm going to lay it in on itself, just like that. And by doing that, you're going to be putting in air pockets in your sourdough. You don't have to knead it too much. I like to knead it though. It's really warm, it's been sitting out in the sun, but I want to stretch it and add that air inside. That makes a really light sourdough. It's not taking too much of this flour, so I'm kind of going to avoid that now and make, again, my little ball. You might even have a more liquidy dough, so just keep doing that and adding a little more flour to it to give it a little more body. Otherwise, it'll flatten down like a pancake. See, I put it down, it wants to crawl out. That's when you know you need to stretch it. But as I pull it and it pulls apart, I know it's got enough of the flour in it, so I don't really need to put much more in there. So make a ball. So I pull it in on itself. That's what's happening underneath as I make my ball of dough. It has enough flour to hold its shape. I'm grabbing the extra from the towel. I'm gonna wash this. It comes right off in the wash anyways. But this happens. This little piece is getting tucked in the center on the bottom. It's gonna grow into itself, so I'm not worried about the imperfections. Moisten the towel again with warm water. Might as well give it a quick clean. Good enough for government work. Wring out the water, and into the bowl it's gonna go, moist. And to avoid the complication of the towel sticking, I'm gonna add some more flour. That way the final dough ball is gonna be not sticking so badly. In she goes, and towel over. Back out in the sun. Next step, grab a Dutch oven or a heavy metal pot that doesn't have any plastic because you're going to bake it in something and you don't want that plastic to melt. I'm going to line my pot with parchment paper. So I'm just cutting a little circle around the lid. That's good. And if you don't have parchment paper, you can use cornmeal. That's fine. I've even used flour at the bottom of the pan. And now let's put our bread in there. Oh yeah, it's gotten bigger. Lift her out of her cradle. And I'm going to aim, shoot, and fire and stick her in the pot and pull her apart from the towel. And here she's going to rise about another hour. So I'm putting the lid on to keep the moisture in. Oh, I'm peeking at the bread. It's been 45 minutes. It needs about another hour to rise. Put the lid back on. Okay, let's see how our dough's doing. It's been in this pot for about 3 hours. Look at it's rising. That's perfect. So I'm putting the lid right back on it. Now my oven's at 450 degrees and I'm putting her in just like that. And she's gonna now sit in there as I turn my oven down to 425 degrees. But before you close the oven, you gotta make sure you slash it. I'm slashing it with a serrated knife. All right, lid on. Push her in. Turn your oven to 400 degrees. And timer for 20 minutes. There you go. It's been 20 minutes. Let's take a look and take the lid off. Oh yeah. So now it's gonna go back without the lid on. Set your timer for another 40 minutes. It's gonna stay there at 400 degrees until it's crispy brown. Okay. Oh, that is looking so good. But you know what? I worry that there might be some humidity in the oven. So now I'm gonna put it back in for the last just 5 minutes with the oven cracked. That's my trick. So crack your oven just a little bit so it'll really crisp up with a crispy crust right in there. Oh, wow, look at that. Look at that crust. Oh, I'm so happy. That looks great. Oh, wow. Look at that. I'm peeling paper off of it now. And add some butter. And let's cut it. Oh, the crispy crust. Oh, wow. Look at that. We have the air holes in it. That's perfect. And on this side, too. And a slice to try. Oh, yum. That looks great. Time to butter it. Oh yeah, it's warm from the oven. This is cold butter, but it's melting. I'm adding a little extra butter. Doesn't that look great? It smells great. There's nothing like the house smelling like fresh baked bread. And I'm gonna break it apart. Time for the bite. That is so great. What great sourdough. Wow. I hope you like it. I hope you try this recipe. It is so fantastic that you can make this loaf of bread for 40 cents each. In the time of the coronavirus, bring your kids and family and make this daily. It's fantastic. I wish you good health and longevity with really good bread. It's one of the happinesses in life to have bread with lots of extra butter. Bye. See you next time. I hope you make this delicious sourdough bread. It's one of my favorite coronavirus recipes. It's popular all over. I wanted to make you a simple recipe, and that's why I use this method. You don't need yeast. Click the link below to get your Snorkel. Glad it's around now for the coronavirus. A lot of households have a lot of people packed in. That's fun. You're so lucky you have your family with you during this time. I'm Rebecca Brand. Subscribe to my channel and let's keep making great recipes in life. I hope you're doing well during this time. Make sure you make your comments. Bye now. If you like this video, here's some more great recipes for the coronavirus right over here.